Did you watch the first one?
I did.
Okay.
You guys were made for this, by the way. Your voices are awesome. Sounds great.
It's the mic.
I don't know. Bill has an excellent voice regardless. So.
Well, thank you. I've heard that now from almost, I don't know, everybody. Maybe I should not have gotten into Salesforce at all, and I should have done something completely different, like drive time for people, making their way home from Salesforce.
Yeah, you could have been the next Howard Stern, man.
Nick Wigs.
Baba Booey.
Nick Wigs.
No, that's okay. I once met that guy in an elevator in Vegas, by the way.
Oh,
just me and him. Just me and him, and he did not have the hair on. I can tell you that right now.
Oh wow,
yeah.
Trade secret.
That makes me think of when Captain Hook lost his hair in Hook. I imagine that's what he looked like.
It was very similar to that. I walked out of my hotel room to go to the airport, and this gentleman's walking kind of right next to me. We're actually at Mandalay Bay. And out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, man, I think that's Howard Stern. I mean, the profile looked like Howard Stern, just not with the hair. And we got on this elevator. We had to wait for it for a while. We got on the elevator, and he stood across from me, and I looked at him. I said, that's Howard. And I said, you Howard? And he goes, yeah. It's like, man, this is crazy, dude. And so we chatted, going down the, 30 stories.
What do you chat with Howard Stern in an elevator about?
I asked him what he was doing out here, out in Vegas.
Yeah.
He asked me the same, and that was kind of, we just chit-chatted. There wasn't much else to say. He's very quiet. I mean, he wasn't a big personality at all. He's very quiet, polite. And he got off, and I walked behind him out to the lobby, and he was headed to whatever their, gym was to work out. I never thought Howard Stern would work out either. Sorry, Howard.
Leaving the wig at home. Don't want to get that caught in any machinery.
Awesome. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for coming on the Boombox Boardroom today and listening into this awesome conversation with Bill and I and our great guest, Rina. Bill, I'm going to let you introduce Rina, since I guess you guys have known each other for a little while.
Yeah, exactly. So, Rina, welcome to the Boombox Boardroom. And everybody, full context, Rina and I have known each other for about 9 years or so. We've worked together twice. We were colleagues once at another Salesforce partner based out of Chattanooga. And then I was able to hire her away at another company that I was at. And she does amazing, amazing work in the Salesforce space and even beyond that. But I know her as part artist, part gym wall climber, mountain bike enthusiast, and an occasional singer. So, Rina, welcome again here. And if you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody and just give them a little background, where you live and family and so forth.
Yeah, so I'm actually outside of Chattanooga in Cleveland, Tennessee. So it's a small town, but Chattanooga is pretty close. So it's kind of the hip city nearest me. I'm a single mom.
It's really hip now with Jared, the way he looks with his mustache, by the way.
Yes. It is very on trend. I'm a single mom. I have two teenage, I have a son who's 17. He's about to be 18. And my daughter is 19. And they're, for the most part, thriving and doing the teenage thing. So I started my career as a graphic designer, and at some point decided I would be a front-end developer. So I did that for a little bit. And then just kind of naturally ended up in user experience, UX for short. So yeah, that's what I do. And that's the short version of how I got here.
Great. Well, we're definitely going to dive into the UX a little bit more, but I know a bit about how you got here, but I'd love for you to kind of walk us through how did you start in this industry and how did you end up here? So a little bit more detail around that would be awesome.
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I'll just start there.
Yeah.
I learned the term graphic design, and I realized that's what I wanted to do because it didn't really require math. Because the younger version of me wanted to be an architect, but the math and precision. So graphic design was it. So I went to school for that. Did that for a few years, and I've known HTML since I was 15. And back then, that was a big deal. And that kind of naturally led me to front end web development. So my parents both had businesses, small businesses, and they needed an online presence and graphic design and all of that. So I was their person. So I actually, when I was pregnant with my daughter, that would have been 2004. My ex-husband, my husband at the time, he got a part-time job with Verizon, and so they sent us up to Nashville to go train for his position. And I was there for like 2 weeks, and I just stayed in my pajamas and at my computer, and I learned how to code better and how to set up a shared hosting environment and like a pre-WordPress content management system. And that
Nice.
experience, just being kind of in a basement coder, environment for that 2 weeks, that really changed my career path. So at that point, I could start marketing myself as a developer.
Yeah.
That I was a designer who knew HTML and CSS and all that jazz. So yeah, I could market myself outside of just the design sphere. And so I held a job for front end development that was at a marketing agency. That was about 4 years. And then they naturally, because of the questions I was asking, they kind of created a position, UX, user experience specialist. And UX was still kind of new. It wasn't, the popular keyword to put on your resume. It was the fusion of, okay, I know design, and now as a front end developer, these high polished designers, our visual designers, are handing me stuff to implement and code out, and I'm like, what the heck? You even understand what I have to do here? So I started asking a lot of questions about that, like, the interaction. What is this thing supposed to do? It looks beautiful in this static mock-up, but did you think about what it's supposed to do and how the user is supposed to interact with it? And so I think that in a nutshell is why I was naturally fit for user experience, because of the questions that I ask. So once I started in UX as formal roles, and Bill, you've experienced this, I was able to start getting into design sprints, like Google design sprints, tweaked slightly, and realized that diagramming, marker boarding is a huge passion of mine. Getting
Yep. You're
a
very
client,
good at it.
getting
Very
a
good at it.
client in the room, like hearing their president, their CEO, their IT person, everybody in the room for a whole week, and having them argue over how the system actually works is priceless. It is. There's no amount you could put on that. The learnings for them, but
Yeah.
also for the team doing the sprint. And we were able to prototype some initial designs to try to help solve for whatever they came to us for. So that was some of my best work, some of my most favorite work, getting to help facilitate clarity for clients. And then at that time, I was still prototyping, right? So it wasn't just doing wireframes and things like that. I was actually doing some of the prototyping, and that is so much fun to see a client, the eureka moment of, wow, I never thought about this. I never thought about doing it this way, and it solves my problem. Like, that's so rewarding. It's one of my favorite parts about what I do.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I have been through that experience with you, first as a colleague. So witnessed a little bit of it, but I didn't really truly appreciate your approach in the process until we hired you back to walk us through that sprint. And I was amazed at your marker boarding skills, but it was the questions you asked. And we had me and a few of the other folks that worked at this company, including our CEO. And I think we all walked away from that day or two that we spent with you just really amazed about what we learned about ourselves, and what we wanted to accomplish. And so then that was the most valuable thing. And then when we saw the result of it, it's like, wow, this is amazing, amazing work. So I appreciate it more. And I know when we first met, I remember when I came to that other Salesforce partner, I came in, I was kind of walking around and, virtually walking around and meeting all the staff at the company. And we had an opportunity to get on a Zoom or whatever we were doing back then. And I knew you were doing UX, and I told you I was a very big proponent of UX.
I remember that.
And the way you explained it in just about 5 minutes or so was amazing to me. And I was like, this is solid. This is great. I'm so glad that they have UX here at this company, because a lot of companies think they do it, but they don't really do it. And they certainly don't have designated roles. And it's so important to connect function with how your users interact with that function to ultimately get to a result that's very meaningful and personal to that user. So if you can take maybe a couple minutes here and almost walk back in time and recount for our audience here kind of what you told me around UX. How do you view UX?
There's no telling what I told you, but it was honest, I'm sure.
Always honest.
Okay, so what I would say for UX, companies everywhere treat UX differently, in my experience. So I've gotten to see where UX is go make it pretty. I've gotten to see where UX is coding. I've gotten to see where UX is research. And in my current role, that's largely what the 300 some odd UXers at the company are. They are researchers. They're trying to follow it's not an exact path every single time, but it's a longer engagement for UX to try to understand the problem and understand what we're trying to solve. And that's a good thing. I come from more of a lean UX background, and that's largely because of startup companies and having to wear multiple hats, right, in the role. But really, in a nutshell, different companies think of UX differently. And I would say it's part research, part understanding interaction, and having an interest and curiosity around the technical, and then also good design, right? And design means not just, hey, I like that button. It's really the flow, right? The flow of the entire experience, whether it's a page or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of how I would summarize myself. And I think that that's the best description of UX as it relates to, where I've been and what I've seen. I'll pause there.
Yeah, well, and it's psychology, right? I mean, so it's about what does the person naturally do. It's the same idea as you don't put a doorknob or a door handle that you would pull on when the door's meant to be pushed through.
Right.
But it's a digital version or a digital experience, and how someone would naturally experience that, right?
Yeah, it is. And honestly, so I think it's a fusion. You've got to have design. You've got to have a good eye for design. You also have to have function, right? You have to understand function, but you also have to leverage some common sense and make things intuitive and know how to get to that point where things are intuitive. A software developer, they can definitely make it functional. Some software developers have a decent eye for design and UX, and some of them don't. So in my experience, it's good to team up with developers, right? Yeah. Especially back-end developers. You can't just say, okay, it functions, we're done. You have to test it with users. You have to ask users. And before you even start coding, you have to ask them, what is it that you need? What problems do you have? What can we solve for you? How can we make this thing better? Right.
Yeah.
So, and that process can be lean. It could also be a longer type of research engagement, but the whole point is to solve for what the users, where they feel pain, right?
So Rena, why would you do lean versus more lengthy processes? Is there something that would drive that?
That's a good question. I think I just come from lean, so that's typically my style.
Mm-hmm.
And for context, professional services working environments, that is you have to bill the client for your time, right? And so UX becomes a line item. And if a client has a finite budget, which they typically do, then they still have to have the app built or the experience built. So if you spend all of your time, all your calories on UX, you've burned through their budget, right? So it's really kind of a responsibility. Plus, it's also exciting in a shorter engagement to go from discovery to something tangible very quickly. I really love that process. But there are, I'm sure, in different industries, there are reasons to take longer and it be more formal research. Where I currently work, it's a blend, and it's different in every space. So I think it just depends on how large the company is, what type of working environment it is. If it's a professional services, you have to be fair to the client while also doing a really good job. And then if you're not in that professional services environment and your home company, your parent company has the funds and the time to do proper research, and take a very long time, sometimes 6 months to figure out a thing, then that's always good. There's a lot of learnings that you can get through whenever you have that kind of time. It's not always fun from my perspective, but I also I grew up, so to speak, in that fast prototyping mode. So that's kind of where my heart is.
Yeah, you said something, and I thought it was really interesting in your pre-interview questionnaire about you kind of recognize this in you back when you would move your room around and change things. And I like the way you put it. It's like you were learning, flow and optimization and putting it into practice, right?
Yeah. So I never really understood why I did that until, I started really kind of getting into UX and understanding the thought processes and just naturally letting that, come through, manifest in me. But it was already there for sure. When I was in my crazy, weird hair days, kind of 90s, I had definitely a finite space, right? So this is a parallel to the working environment. I have a finite space, finite budget, and I have things that some things can go away, some things can't, right? And so this is what I have to work with. And so what different configurations can I create? And what is that experience? How does that feel, right? So I remember having some shelves that my dad built that would normally go up against the wall, but I was like, I wonder what it would be like if I put them small into the wall, right? And have it come out. Well, it was a very small bedroom, first of all. So there was no business in splitting that room, but it was an interesting experience to kind of divide up the space. And, my brain it was like introducing purpose of space, right? Without realizing that's what was happening. But yeah, I did that quite a lot when I was younger. And that was around the same time that I had these kits of, they had floor plan kits where they had plastic, it's not sticky, but
I remember what they are. Yeah.
Yeah. So you had a grid and you had these sheets of
almost like staticky
the
vinyl
window
or something
kind of material.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you would cut out the different like walls and the windows and drawers and the couches and stuff. So I went through a huge phase, with that stuff, because there was just something about optimizing space or getting to play and prototype experiences with space that I've always loved that.
I had a very similar kind of behavior. Me and my twin brother had separate rooms. And so I'm very OCD and very neat. So I would organize. I would change things around and I'd dump all my junk in my twin brother's room. That's how I optimized.
He didn't mind?
He didn't care. You should have seen his room. It was awful.
Probably didn't even notice.
No.
That's hilarious.
So again, having witnessed your process, and again, I thought it was amazing because the questions were talking about not just what you're trying to achieve right out of the application that's being built, right? But who's going to use it? Who's going to participate? What are their kind of dreams, wishes, requirements, right? It's more than just the function. It's the feeling too. Because at the end of the day, you want people to adopt whatever you're building for them. But how has UX in your world kind of shifted or changed or evolved in how you practice it today from where you kind of first started to now? Just that evolution of maturity in the UX space.
Well, I'm more open to longer research efforts now, because I sort of have to be. But I'm also learning from peers. So one of the biggest things as far as like how I'm leveraged is, I've gone from rapid prototyping, rapid solving, all the way to supporting an ongoing product, an enterprise product. So products that users have to use to do their job. And that looks a little different. So from my own experience, it definitely looks different. In UX, I feel like I've seen a shift in the industry. When I was first in UX, I was more like a unicorn, as they say, not because I wanted to be a unicorn, but because people didn't know what to do with UX, right? They didn't know how to engage UX. They didn't know what it meant. But there were amazing things that I was able to accomplish and other people in similar roles. So going from the unicorn to a more mature, more developed and collaborative UXer has been a huge change in me. And I'm seeing a larger pool of people, engaging in that way of UXing. So it's not just about the unicorn experience of UX anymore. Now it's very collaborative and it's very research heavy. But I would also say that the industry as a whole, there's so many people in UX now. So when I first started in graphic design, it felt like everyone's sister, everyone's mom, and everyone's cousin was in UX, right? The industry was flooded. And so I feel like we're kind of in that with UX. It's really flooded. And being on the early end of the popular version of UX, because there were pioneers well before I even realized what UX was. But I'm on the older side of that now. And so I have my ways, right? And the younger people who are going through boot camps and actually getting degrees for UX, which I don't think that was a big thing when I was first getting into UX. They're so much closer to more precise methods, and they're formally trained, right? And so that is changing the industry as well, right? And so there's a level of excellence that's even from a junior or someone just starting their career in UX. Many of them have a level of UX and clarity around what they are planning to do, what they can do, than I feel like some of us earlier adopting UX as a career path. So I think there's been so much time that has gone by from the pioneers to like the second layer of pioneers, so to speak, and then the practitioners. And it has shifted because of the need, the awareness, and the level of education that's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So for, our viewers' sake, just to kind of understand just some basic concepts of UX, when someone's, let's say, submitting a form, they open up a window, the X to close out's always in that upper left-hand corner or upper right-hand corner, and then the submit button's always in the bottom right. So is that something that we, over the years, have just been trained on, and so we just assume it's going to be there? Or is that something that, that there's some psychology behind why we go that way?
I'm sure there's some deep psychology around why we go there. For me, is forward movement you know, not everything is linear, but from a form perspective, that could be, from a flow perspective, that could be considered linear. And I do feel like, you know, that submit button should be on the right, the close should be on the right. Um, and these things are, you know, we use apps every day, whether it's on our laptops, our computers, at school, at work, on our phones, on TVs, everything. Like, we're becoming familiar with patterns because someone said it that way, right? So we just get used to it. It's a familiarity that we don't even have to articulate. It's just there and it's familiar. um, I feel like there are some patterns that are so familiar that when it's presented differently, it feels wrong. It feels weird. It feels different, right? Um, so I don't know from a pioneer perspective, all the people who did all the research back in the day, Nielsen Norman, Jared Spool, I think there were a couple of others. They probably have a lot of psychology backing their decisions on why things, but I haven't read all the books. So I feel like it's more of a flow movement to me. And when it's wrong, users feel it. Usually it's clunky or cumbersome and it's just an awkward experience. And like I said, they know something's wrong, but they don't know why. So,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting the way you're reminding me of a few things. So, um, like Steve Jobs, when he was basically his team Macintosh was designing the Mac in that user interface, which they borrowed heavily from Xerox PARC, Palo Alto Research Center, and using the mouse to work with the screen and so forth. That somewhat set a bit of a standard because, here comes along Windows, all right, very similar. And then let's jump forward, 30 years. You've got the whole iPhone experience when the iPhone came out in 2006, 2007, something like that. And see how much that influenced, those two events really influenced both desktop, user interfaces and mobile interfaces. Because there's not a drastic difference between, like, for instance, an Android and an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
In where things are laid out, how you engage, how you interact. Some would argue it's more fluid on one versus another, but there's somewhat it's a bit of convention, but people have adopted it so much. Doing anything different would be odd.
yes, that's what I was going to say. 2 points on that. I feel like when you like, they didn't come out with the iPhone when Apple first started, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they had so many years of trial and error and excellence being pushed by the founding vision, right?
Yeah.
I feel like by the time they got to iPhone, they probably had curated an excellent team backed with, really awesome design, education and experience, but also that psychology. They probably had the resources to really understand these things. I wish I had been a part of that to see what their process was and how long it took them to come up with decisions like this. So I think a lot of times it's resources from a company who has good standing, good ground. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. Um, people listen to them, right? And I mean, iPhones were slick and they still are. Android isn't that much different. Samsung makes a really good phone, and also washer and dryer and all kinds of appliances. Um, but yeah, I think when a big brand like that, creates something that flows well, now a standard exists, right? And everyone else is trying to copy them. Um, the other part of that is kind of what you said is, if I set out to create an app today and I did not follow any of those familiar patterns, conventions, as some might say, it's probably gonna tank unless it's something so revolutionarily different and exciting to use. It's just not. It's probably not gonna thrive. It's probably not gonna do very well. It's gonna take something really inventive to succeed beyond convention, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see where UX and AI merge.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
And I don't know much about it, but I can imagine a day where those user interfaces are highly personalized and timely for a specific person.
Yep.
Because all of us interact differently, even though there's those conventions out there, right? My screen's different. My focus is different, right? So, do you have any thoughts on that? Have you speculated about that?
Man, this is a can
Are
of
we going to go
worms.
deep now?
Yeah. So, yeah. First of all, there are some people who think UXers will go away and be out of a job because of AI. So I'm automatically like, I don't think so. So I don't like it, but I think that there's definitely some merit of AI. And I'm not an early adopter, believe it or not. I really am not. Um, so I've kind of been on the okay, that's a little creepy. Do I really want it knowing what I want in every experience? Um, but there's some value, and I'll tell you why. Some of the most recent uses of AI that I have engaged in, just testing it out. Um, so I use Canva for making small graphics, small things, small videos.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm working on at work is a user guide for the tool that I support, for the software that I support. We don't already have that. And so it's an opportunity to come up with brand new content, even some how to videos. And so I used Canva, and actually I used Screen Studio to do the screen share and the zooming in and out, which is awesome. And then I take that into Canva, and then I they have Murph AI, which is the voice, the not even a voice over. You just type in what you want to say and you choose the voice and it reads it. And
Yeah.
so I leveraged a newscast flavor of a voice, and it's amazing. And I'm like, why didn't I think of this before? Like, I bought into it. I actually bought both apps, the plugin for the AI and the Screen Studio, because I don't know, it's exciting to be able to produce something that seems very professionally done with very little effort. And so I think that's where some of that merit comes in. Let AI handle some of the, like, I would have to go out and hire someone, a professional. I would hire Bill to do my reading for those how-to videos, right?
Oh gosh.
A
Yeah.
really nice voice, right? Um, but I don't have to do that now because Murph AI plugs into Canva, a tool I already use. So I'm sort of turning around on the whole AI, but I think it gets creepy very quickly. And
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of creepy, ChatGPT told Jared to shave his mustache like that. Just
I
saying.
know. Yeah. It
Yeah.
even sent me a picture of the shapes.
yeah, why are you asking it for advice on shaving? That's what I want to know. And what relationship do you have with this chat GPT?
Evidently, a very intimate relationship with ChatGPT. Oh,
No, I mean it's and I think that's the thing. Like you said, people are saying, "Oh, well, there won't be any more UXers after AI really gets going." And what you just said is why your job won't be going away, because you're using it, you're learning it, you're understanding it, and it will be your helper.
Right.
You just saved your company tons of money by, or just got a much better product out to teach people how to use this, to run them through this new system because of those little shortcuts. And that's what's going to change everything. Is you're going to be 10 times more productive. You're going to be 10 times more efficient. Things are going to move across the finish line a month earlier than they would have, depending on the size of the project. And I think that's where AI is going to help in the UX world more than hurt. I mean, I just this morning was watching a video of and I forgot the name of it, but an AI product that's completely coding beginning to end, even debugs itself completely, which is fascinating. I could go in and say, hey, I want to build a website that has all of this information, and it can fully code that website for me. It can search the web, pull up the APIs from the different apps I want to plug in, use those APIs, move everything forward, and just incredible leaps and bounds how far this stuff has gone. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be able to understand and that every single person who says something is going to know what to say to make you do the right things. And that's where I think it's important to know it, but it's not going to rule the world. It's not going to write what it wants because it thinks that it should. Still needs that prompt. It still needs that person. It still needs that use case. And I think that's where the human element like will always remain.
Yeah, no, I like your version, your explanation of it a lot better than a lot of others. Um, I feel like from a code perspective, because I've used things like Dreamweaver when I was way
Yep.
early in my career, or
Yeah.
anything, even Figma. Figma, I use Figma currently to do drawn prototypes, like click through prototypes, and
Yeah.
it's an industry standard. But it also has a code mode. I'm a skeptic as far as the quality and semantics of the
Yeah.
code. Now AI may be smart enough to figure that out, and if it does and it writes code cleanly, that's awesome. But you brought up an interesting thing. It's not gonna know why. Like, why is it being created? Why is it creating this thing that's being coded? And how does it know the scope? How does it know the bounds? Like, what is complete to that
Yeah.
code base? So I think that really opens up some really interesting conversation about, from a daily software balance team perspective. We're on a backlog, we're working through stories, and for story writing, it's, you know as a user, I need this thing because of blah blah blah. And then for the developers to understand how to write that story, these things are constraints, these things are required, and here's how you might test that, and here's what's considered done. It would be really interesting how much of that process AI could mimic or emulate.
Yeah. No,
It'll
absolutely.
be it'll be interesting to see that evolution. I remember, I think it was you that shared a study with me back when we first met, where depending on the time, companies that spent a lot of time on the front end with design versus companies that did not. The companies that did not saw a 5x, I think, increase in the amount of development time it took because they're
Yes.
constantly revisiting, right?
Yep.
So from an AI UX merge design process, there's a way to take advantage of some of those things that are more laborious, right? Everything from research to testing and other things like that, that can shorten that window of design to something a lot more efficient, therefore making it more cost effective, but still getting the benefits and gains out of, a 1x, 2x development cycle instead of a 5x development cycle.
Yeah, so that reminds me of my time at a Salesforce shop, that I was hired to actually prove out designs before they were touched by developers, right? And so I came in, I did some lean research with the client, understanding what they need, understanding the problem, wireframe, napkin sketch, whatever, and then went into code prototyping so that the client could see in the browser. And once they gave thumbs up, like, yes, this is what we want, it was then handed to the fairly expensive Salesforce developers, so that it could be developed and produced. So that saved the client a lot of money in that context. Um, I think what it's going to face is trust. Like, can it go through that process that I just described? And it may. I'm not saying it couldn't, but there's a lot of trust exercises that would need to happen in order for me to say, okay, client ABC, engage with this. We're going to engage with this AI. It's going to hear what you say, and then it's going to go out and produce some concepts and some possible solutions or pitches or whatever. And that's what we'll hand the developer, or we'll also hand it to the AI to code out. I think a client would be, well, I have X amount of money and I know you can do it really well and your developers are really good. What happens if this AI thing gets it wrong and doesn't work? Right. So there's inherent trust issues that I have with AI, and I think a lot of the world probably does, outside of the creep factor. So if AI is going to prevail in our daily lives from a real productivity perspective, especially in professional services environments where there's a high budget, client budgets at stake, we're going to have a good relationship with AI,
Yep.
before we adopt it fully.
Totally agree. I mean,
Sure.
trust and money collide with each other all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, without a doubt.
Well, so speaking of trust, you trusted us with some photos as we're kind of wrapping
Oh,
up
I can't
here.
wait to see.
And I've seen these. Bill hasn't seen them yet.
No.
But this is pure gold.
Oh no.
You mentioned your hairstyles earlier.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this
Okay,
is where I come from Florida originally, and we moved into Tennessee in 3rd grade. I don't know what kind of fashion we had in Florida.
You're blaming Tennessee for this.
I am blaming Tennessee because it's like, what was I thinking? It was
What
not
in the
popular.
Rapunzel is going on there?
I know.
What? How long is that hair?
Oh, it's very long. I don't know if you remember my mom, but she has always had very long hair. So
Yep.
she never really let me cut my hair, but in 3rd grade, I apparently took a pair of scissors to the top of my head somewhere. That's why the big, it's essentially a mullet.
It's a mullet. It's not essentially, that's a mullet.
Well, no wonder you organized your room. Your hair was taking up most of it.
Yeah. But yeah, I do not claim that this was cool or popular.
What year is this about, roughly?
That would have been 5th grade.
Okay.
So that would have been 92.
Prime
wow.
time.
So
Wow.
my mom, she's an artist. And I was telling Jared before that, she was an airbrush artist. She always painted stuff. That shirt is likely a puff paint shirt with squiggles on it.
It definitely has those vibes.
Yeah.
I know the puffy paint shirts.
Yep. That's me all the way.
That's awesome. That's the best.
Great.
Okay, I'm gonna say this because I think it's very important for every human to hear, no matter what phase of life. Suffering provides meaning. So I feel like I have a very meaningful life because I know where I've come from, and I feel like I have been refined by my experiences. I'll just say it that way.
That's the perfect way to say it. Okay, so then a few other things, like obviously, like this is kind of a vintage podcast as well, and it looks like you brought the vintage with you.
I
So
did.
can you? I mean, obviously, like there's that guy trying to look like me on the Magnum PI cover, but
Yeah.
what-
Do you guys remember these guys?
Oh, yeah, California
yes.
raisins.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Oh,
then-
you got like the set of them. Oh yeah,
Trolls?
Cabbage Patch. Or no, that's the
Aren't
trolls.
those trolls?
Yeah,
Did you say Cabbage Patch?
I did say Cabbage Patch. Sorry,
Oh,
Wrong.
gosh.
the trolls.
Yeah.
He was distracted by looking at himself in the Magnum PI box.
Yes.
And then is your name on that box back there? What is that?
It is. So, like I was saying earlier, my mom doesn't throw anything away. And probably early 90s, she found this box of laundry detergent. It's real. There's stuff in there.
That's amazing.
But she wrapped it in plastic wrap and she kept it on her laundry shelf for like, I don't know, what would that be? Like 20, 30 years? No, about 20 years. So this is like 20-year-old laundry detergent. And I have a little Mork and Mindy
Oh yeah.
and a little I thought this was cute. It's like it sits and you have to like push it down and the wings go up, but you put bubble gum in there and so it squats and pushes out a bubble gum ball. I remember liking that when I was little. Cars.
Oh, yeah.
So I had 2 older brothers and I liked playing with Barbies, but I also loved making car roads and playing with cars. So
I can see that.
yeah. So back to the whole optimization and flow thing, 100% road design. 100%.
Yep. Forward movement.
And then just a couple other tacky things. but-
Oh, the Hardys. I mean, they would fill those things up with coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insulated and it is in like excellent condition. I could probably
Wow.
eBay this.
It's practically our color palette there.
I know,
Jared.
yeah.
But it reminds me of Saved by the Bell a little bit.
Oh, it's totally Saved by the Bell.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's got 90s all over it. And I
Oh, yeah.
mean, 59-cent refill. you haven't been able to refill anything for 59 cents in at least a decade, if not
You guys
two.
dare me to take this to Hardee's and ask if I could get a 59-cent refill?
Do it. Film it.
Yeah. That'd be
Oh,
great.
it's great. Now, Mork and Mindy, was that just a favorite of yours? Because I think Mork and Mindy was out before you were even born.
Yeah, so it's a little older, but this is one of the games that I grew up with. I also had Spirograph, this is an older one, but do you guys remember that?
That's where the design started.
I totally had one of those. They were so fun.
One of the last things I'll show you real quick. I don't know if you guys will know what this is, so this will be a quiz. This is really obscure, but really important. If I can get enough pieces. Okay, do you guys know what this is? Tell me you know what this is.
Rolling papers? What?
Yeah, it looks like some kind of foil.
I don't know.
So this is called friendly plastic. And my mom and I, so you put it in hot water so it softens and you can mold it into anything. Unfortunately, I don't have any of the jewelry that we made from it, but we totally made jewelry, plastic jewelry using that.
Huh.
So that's a relic as well. Obscure, but.
As I said earlier, artist, and I know your mom's an artist. I have one of her items here in my own home.
Let me show you real quick. Because I have her airbrush machine here, but this is one of the things that she designed. It's a side of a building. And
cool.
They just painted over it this last year.
Yeah.
But that was in Etowah, Tennessee. It was a hair cutting place. And
is that Ooltewah?
Etowah.
No, Etowah.
Is that different than Ooltewah?
It is. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Both Indian names, I'm pretty sure, but
good try, Bill.
It took me like 2 years to figure out, it was Ooltewah that I was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Gosh,
That's
well,
great.
Rina, thank you so much for joining us today and just for sharing so much of your knowledge and wisdom about UX and UI. I mean, it's such a unique. I mean, we could have talked for 4 hours on this, and I don't think it would have.
Session 2 could be about UX of bathrooms. That's a really hot.
Yes, like you don't put 2 urinals in the corner.
You don't make shiny floors so that they become mirrors.
So really quick,
also a thing.
let me ask your UX opinion about this bathroom.
Okay.
A good friend of mine, bought a house not too far from where I live today. And we went to go look at this house. And it really is an interesting mid-century modern house, which I know you dig just like I do, right? Yeah. And it had a couple additions. But in the master bedroom suite, right? You walk in and there's, your countertop and so forth, sinks, and there's a toilet. And then there's a door. And right behind that door, on the other side of the wall, is another toilet. So you could literally open this pocket door and hold hands with somebody.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's a good user experience or not.
Okay. This is probably TMI. But I remember my parents, we had at that crazy outfit picture at that same house, there was a half bath and then the master bath, but they shared one tub shower, but they had doors that you could see each other on the toilet. And I remember them doing that. I don't know why I would have seen that, but I always thought that was really funny.
Well, this, you could not see each other. You could just hold hands. That's it.
Reach around the wall?
It was literally right there.
Can you hand me some TP?
It was an odd design choice. That's for sure. I think somebody got lazy and didn't want to move the plumbing. That's my guess.
I mean, my first thought is one a bidet. Like,
we'll call that a design constraint.
Would you need more privacy for the toilet or the bidet? Because that really is about the experience.
I don't know. Not going to be a design choice I make in a future home. That's for sure.
Me either.
No.
Well, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks for just sharing your knowledge with us. It's I really do think it's something that a lot of people maybe haven't paid attention to or haven't thought about. But they experience it every day. So yeah, we just appreciate you joining us and sharing all your knowledge with us.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Rina. Thanks everybody for joining the Boombox Boardroom. See ya.
Later.